Today we're going to learn about compost. Ron Estes is one of our members, and he's a very experienced gardener. I have not been to this place, but I've heard from people who have been, and they're amazing.
And they don't get anything.
So we will move on from here. It's up to you, Ron. Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. I'm Ron Estes. I live in Pipe Creek, and I do most of my gardening in digging tubs, earth boxes, containers. I've got a few raised beds, but mostly everything I do is in containers because my dirt is all rocks, like everybody else around here. And I sell all my produce to the bistro here at Pipe Creek. So he buys anything I raise. Okay, let's get started. See if I can make this thing work. The reason you make compost is to get this microbial population into your garden or into your garden pots. The microbes basically feed the roots of the plants. You don't really have to have chemical fertilizers. If you've got the right microbial population, the plants will grow just fine, and the weeds won't. Right. How did that? Okay. The types of composting. Cold composting basically means that you're not trying to get the pile up to a certain temperature. It's going to be a much longer term process. You still need to work on your carbon to nitrogen ratios, but usually cold composting will take probably a year from the time you start it till it's fully developed with a good microbial population. Thermal composting, what you're doing with thermal composting is getting the right nitrogen carbon ratios so that the pile temperature will get up to 158 degrees ideally. I've never made a pile get up to 158 degrees, but if you get up to say 120, you're killing most of the bad stuff and the seeds, the weed seeds that are in it. Or bokashi composting. Are y'all familiar with this at all? Basically, what you do here is you take your kitchen scraps and you collect them each day, and then after you've got enough that you need to move them out, you take them out and put them in I use 5-gallon buckets. You can buy the 5-gallon buckets with a snap-on ring that has a screw lid on it that will make it airtight. And so that's how this works. You put your table scraps in this bucket, and then it's going to be airtight, so it's going to be anaerobic. You have to add to the bucket to get it to work. You have to add microbes in some form. And if on the internet on Amazon, you can buy bags of either bran or sawdust or whatever that you put in the bucket, and it then starts the process. So after 2 or 3 months in the airtight condition, you can take it out and then bury it, either bury it in your garden or bury it in your compost pile, and it will then continue to break down, and it will just turn into soil.
Is that like your chicken coop and you use the shavings and they compost in them? You can use that up.
What I use sawdust, but then I make my own lab, the lactose basilicus. If you take a cup of rice and 2 cups of water, and you soak the rice for about 3 or 4 days, you can take that liquid and put it at a ratio of 10-to-1 in milk. It will make cheese, but the liquid you have left over is full of the lactose basilicus, and that will fire everything off. Okay, then vermiculture. I raise the red regular earthworms because I use them in my cold composting to help break it down quicker. You load it up with worms and it helps break down the whole system quicker. The byproduct of the worm poop basically is a very good compost in itself, but you have to separate the worms out of it and get that. So it's kind of a tedious situation, and you don't get a lot of it unless you have a lot of worms. But I just feed them ground up cardboard, and they thrive in that. Carbon to nitrogen ratios. We'll talk about that a little bit. Basically, I try to get at least a 2-to-1, but ideally it's 3-to-1 ratio of the nitrogen to the carbon. Okay, we cover that. This graph shows then your pile will heat up and then drop down. And as you see, once it gets above around 122, 140, you're really killing the bad stuff in the compost. But in order to get this to work in a thermal pile, is you have to continually turn it, because you have to keep it aerated. And at 84 years old, I'm not going to be turning big piles of compost. That's why I go with the cold composting. Okay, we talked about this a little bit. The special equipment is the buckets that I was talking about that you use, and then the product you have to use to get it to work. All right, here it says 2-to-1. I think more ideally that should be 3-to-1. You got to keep the moisture level in it. You have to turn it over, and when you get a pile of 3 foot by 3 foot or 6 foot by 4, that's a lot of shoveling. So I'm not very interested in doing that at my age, but that's an easy way to do it. One way to do it. Okay, the whole purpose of doing compost is to get the microbes and the microorganisms. What I do is I have a microscope, and I take my samples of my compost and start looking at them under the microscope, and you can see the bacteria, the fungi. You can see all of these little bugs, and if they're not present, it's not good compost. And I've taken bags of compost, put it under that you buy at the store, put it under the microscope, and there's very little of these things in it. So bags of compost aren't all they make up to be. You're much better off to do it yourself. Okay. A year ago, I started growing my blackberries in weeping pots, and this picture was taken, like I say, a year ago. Now my blackberries are above this, and they're just loaded. I've got bukus, and all I do is feed the pots with. I use a mixture of seaweed, fish fertilizer to feed the pots, and it really works well. That's a second picture. I also was growing tomatoes in pots. Now here's a system that I use where I just make a wire cage and pile all of my. I try to keep the mixture of nitrogen and carbon in there, but if you keep layering it on, it will eventually, this pile will keep shrinking down, and you can remove the wire and sift it out. If you take 5 pallets, you can make two bins where you can put your compost in one bin and then move it over to the other bin and then back and forth. But like I say, that's a lot of work. And right now I've got mine sitting there at just cold composting. Here's another, I've got 2 of those. I also use 30-gallon trash cans where I just drill holes all in the 30-gallon trash can and then compost right in the can. And it'll break down just fine, and you don't have to do any turning. It's a simple way to do it. Okay, questions?
So your table scraps you can put coffee grinds in there with it?
You can.
Okay, yeah, well, no. Sure.
No. Coffee grinds will compost just fine.
If you put your table scraps out, is it better to chop them down into smaller pieces?
I don't chop them.
Where does the chicken poop and sort of shavings, pine shavings, how does that fit in with the brown versus greens?
Chicken poop and pine shavings? Okay. Your chicken poop is the nitrogen source. And your pine shavings are your carbon. And what you're trying to do is get 3 times as much pine shavings as you have chicken poop. But do you do it by weight? Do you do it by volume? I think weight is the best way to do it, but it's hard to do.
And can I put the chicken compost stuff in with sort of the veggie compost stuff and I'll put it all together?
I wouldn't. You're using the bacteria that you add to your bokashi as your medium. You don't need the poop in there. You don't need poop at all.
Well, as far as, so we do the cold composting outside and we just throw everything into it and then I'm always throwing like brown matter, like leaves. Is that like dead leaves kind of, and like cardboard and stuff?
Right.
But I guess what you're saying is I need to put some microbes in there. Like something to get it started.
Oh, and your bokashi?
Do I have a bokashi? I don't think I do bokashi.
What do you do with your table scraps?
Put them all in the cold compost.
You can, but it's much harder to get that to break down that way.
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
But if you get it in the anaerobic condition where you've got the microbes in there, they get it really broken down. And then when you bury it, it doesn't take long at all. You'll come back and dig it up, and it won't be there.
Okay, that's what's good. So kind of compost separate.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So you want to keep that fairly moist, but not too moist,
Right. Right.
So occasionally when you're gardening, like just sprinkle a little bit of water on top and let that soak in. You don't really. It depends on the climate, but around here when it gets dry.
Yeah, you should be able to take a handful and squeeze it, and water shouldn't come out.
Gotcha.
Okay. Damp. But it's very important to have the damp, because if you don't, the microbes will just go in dormancy.
Okay. Back to making the microbes. So you take a cup of rice, 2 cups of water,
And put it in a cabinet with a cover over it. I use a paper towel.
and then you just strain the water out of it after 2 or 3 days.
Right. And then I just dump the rice in the bokashi bucket. But the juice then that you get off that is your highly concentrated lactose bacillus. And I use that when I'm fermenting. If I'm fermenting any kind of foods, I just use that as my starter.
If you use that on sourdough.
Can you?
I don't know. I'll try it.
Rice.
Sourdough all the time.
Yeah, with rice. Yeah.
So you were saying that you take that liquid and you pour it into milk.
Right. Well, you mix a ratio of 10 to 1. 10 parts milk to 1 part of your rice water. And it will form a head of cheese on top. And it's edible. I'm not big at soft cheeses, so I put mine in the bokashi bucket.
That's what I was wondering. So you make the cheese and put that in the bokashi.
Yeah.
So if I have 2 rubber trash cans, I can drill holes in those and then just start.
Yeah, you can just layer your nitrogen and carbon in the bucket, and you'll put your hands on it. You'll feel it's warm. I take all of my quail poop and I put it in the 30-gallon tubs, because I don't get a whole lot at one time. But I'll put a layer. I dry it first. I lay it out and dry it. Then put it in the 30-gallon bucket. Then add 3 times as much sawdust, and then I put another layer. I just keep doing that, and then wetting it down each time. With the holes drilled in the bucket, then your water drains out. You don't have it. It won't be over wet.
And don't keep a lid on top of it.
I don't.
So if you have a whole lot of leaves like I do, like probably most of us do, the oak leaves, can you use those as part of your
Oak leaves break down really slowly, but if you can shred them in any way, it will help. But yeah, I put oak leaves in my pile. In fact, these things have got oak leaves in them.
They're not too acidic.
Hmm?
They're not too acidic for it.
It's got good shredded, so it's.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not a question, it's just a comment. I tried something new this year and I took actually they're not 5 gallons, they're a smaller gallon bucket and they have the lids are laced and tight. And so, my husband drilled holes and halfway up. And then we buried them in the actual vegetable garden. And then I lit the lid up and I put, I had cardboard shavings, I had crushed egg shells for the chickens, and then I added some greens for the table scraps and stuff. And then I put in earthworms.
Mhm.
And then I shut the bucket. And then I go from time to time and I'll open up the bucket and put more, coffee grinds or whatever I think they need and put it back in there. And the worms have been going in and out into the soil.
Right.
And so I'm not seeing as much, I thought I would see more evidence of like worm poop in the actual bucket, but I'm assuming that they're doing that in the soil themselves. Is that, I assume that?
What are you putting mostly in with the worms?
I'm putting a combination of cardboard that's cardboard.
Do you run it through a paper shredder?
Yes, it's already shredded. I bought this already shredded from the worm guy. And then I add like crushed egg shells, some coffee grinds, and then I do a lot of greens. Like if I peel zucchini, I put those in there and all of that.
The eggshells are not doing you any good.
They're not doing me any good.
No,
Okay.
they will not break down. What you need to do with the eggshells is to grind them up in your coffee grinder until they're a powder.
Oh, a powder. Okay, I'm not grinding them that fine.
Yeah, if you grind them up into a powder, then you can get them in.
Then I can get in there. Okay. Because sometimes I just feed the eggshells back to the chicken. But okay.
Okay, do you bake the eggshells before you thaw them?
No, I do not.
Yeah, it's best to put your eggshells in the oven and kill all the stuff that's left in the egg,
Uh-huh.
and then grind them up.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that way you have experience.
Okay. Well, that's good.
That's good.
I hope I haven't told my words anyway.
Well, the worms aren't eating the eggshells at all.
Okay,
You're better off to just spread that in the garden.
okay. Because the reason I decided to do this way is I didn't think our soil, even though we try very hard, is the best. And so they said, well, you can get earthworms in there aerating it, it'll help improve the soil.
Right.
Okay.
Now, why are we supposed to put earthworms in your above the ground planters?
Excuse me?
I wanted to get some worms and put it in above the ground planters, but they told me that it would kill the worms.
Well, you have to make sure that the moisture in that planter stays pretty moist, or the worms will die.
109.
Yeah. It's very difficult, if you're putting them into a planter. Now, if you put them in the ground, you still need to make sure that ground stays watered, or they won't survive.
I don't have the inner stick on it.
What about wood ash? Do you use wood ash in any way to compost them yourself? Like stuff that we put up on the property and then trying to figure out what to do with it? No.
I've never tried to put it in the compost. I use it for the dust for the quail.
Oh, okay, yeah, we save it for the chicken.
Yeah. The only problem is they make such a mess. That ash goes everywhere.
Yeah, okay, but not for composting.
No, I don't put it in compost.
Question.
Sir,
Okay?
I compost horse milk
Yeah.
and I do the big pile. My husband has a tractor. You know, it's too big to have it inside my fenced garden. Okay, so it's outside of the fenced garden. We have no green available, you know, to add to it.
So
So
you don't need green in horse manure. You need brown.
Just what do you
Your
need,
horse
leaves?
manure is the nitrogen.
Really? Because I use it, then I use it in the garden, and it doesn't really seem to help the plants. It seems to help the soil to loosen it.
Yeah, it will help the soil, it will help the soil, but if you're composting horse manure, you have to mix it with browns.
Even when it's super dry and like styrofoam, the horse manure. I mean, it's not fresh horse manure.
Right. It's still got nitrogen in it.
Sort of way.
Huh. Okay.
Once you wet it, I think you'll see that it'll heat up. I use it too,
I'm sorry.
but I use it as my nitrogen source.
So we have to add the carbon source.
Horse manure is about as organic as it gets.
Good facts.
It's got all that feed that you put in there, moisture, nitrates. So
One more question.
Yeah.
The horse manure, so if I use just horse manure as fertilizer, I don't need anything else when I plant,
If your horse manure is broken down,
right?
then it's basically compost. It's composted. There's a certain amount of carbon in the poop, along with the nitrogen. I mean, it will naturally decay down, and you can use that after it's become, no longer dirty.
Right.
You can put it right in your garden.
Does it have like phosphorus and potassium in it, or would that be an additive I have to add? Or is it mainly nitrogen? I mean,
I don't have anything to it, but I put it in my compost. I don't use it straight.
oh, okay. Well, I dig it in, you know.
Yeah.
I see the compost piles that you have that have sort of like just a general exposure to the air. We ended up getting one that is sort of those closed containers that you can roll like really easily, and yeah, so there are holes in them for sure. Are they getting enough air in them?
If you look, there's a perforated pipe right down the middle
Okay.
that has holes all in the pipe.
Yeah,
So I get air into the middle of the pile plus air around the sides.
but so the containers that I'm using, I'm almost thinking I'm not getting enough air to them because they are in enclosed containers,
Okay.
but with holes in them.
They make a tool.
Okay.
It's like a stick, and it's got two little levers that when you put it down in there, it spreads, and when you pull it up, then it brings what's on the bottom to the top.
Okay.
That's how you aerate.
Got it. Okay.
You can buy that. You can buy that tool on Amazon.
Okay. Perfect.
It's got some.
But also I think every time you turn it, I think you're adding air. to
Right,
it
that's what
as
you do.
well.
Get the air, get the
Okay.
air back to it.
Yeah, as long as I'm doing the turning.
The bacteria needs the air.
Yeah, because it's not the anaerobic kind that each
Right.
together. Yeah. Okay.
Go for town.
Yep.
No, I was just wondering, when you put broken down produce, you know, scraps, et cetera, and you keep it moist, does that draw fire ants?
I don't think so. I don't think fire ants are attracted to moisture per se. Once you bury the bokashi in the dirt and cover it over and just keep that pile a little damp, in a few months you go dig it out, there's nothing there except nice rich dirt. Works really great.
So stay.
But the key is to put it in an anaerobic condition for a while to get those bugs eating on it.
It's too traditional.
Oh, I'm sorry, another question. I just processed a lot of beets, And so all the, peeling them and all that, can I just dig that right? I have a regular garden,
Yeah.
not, containers. But can I just dig that into the soil, but then I have to keep the soil moist, right? Or do I put it, the one that
Or
you're
what do you
talking
got,
about?
beet peels?
Yeah, beet peels,
I just treat it as, table scraps.
okay, and put them in like a bucket or something like that first?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I did.
I
Look up Bokashi on the internet and it will explain it a lot better.
I just think I'm doing every method, but like in one sheet.
I feel it.
I'm just throwing it all together and just perfectly less. Let's make difference.
Okay? Thanks.
Bokashi is the one that to put on your rice water, cheese.
That, you're making basically lactose cereals in a liquid form. Yep. Then you use a small amount of that in water and pour it over your compost pile. You can put it on your plants, you can put it in the soil under your plants. It does wonders.
Oh, so you don't have to make cheese.
It's gonna make cheese by itself. What you're getting is the liquid under the cheese.
Isn't it like whey?
It's like a whey.
Yeah. Okay. So
It's, I don't have any way to make a whey, but I can make that just really easy.
But a whey, like, cause I use goat's milk to make cheese, and then I have the whey, and I'm like, it's gross to me, so I don't know what to do with it.
Put it in your compost.
Absolutely.